Welcome to Before the Score, episode number 17. I'm Steve Samra. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in and spending an hour with us. I know it's a weird time in our world, but I hope everybody's staying safe and we can entertain you for an hour. We have a lot of fun topics to talk about today, but our top story is that the MLB might be Arizona bound. Pablo Hernandez, tell me, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Well, Steve, thank you very much for that great intro. I couldn't be any more excited about this, possible move to Arizona to start the Major League Baseball season. Honestly, this is something that would be a very bold move, not something necessarily that we all thought was going to happen, but I think it's something that, if can be done, would be absolutely huge, and only for Major League Baseball, not only for other sports, just in terms of the recovery period for everybody. We kind of need sports to get back to normal. So I think this would be a phenomenal move if MLB can somehow sneak their way into playing into Major League Baseball in Arizona. I mean, I'm going to tell you what. Right now, this is just something that's proposed, right? It's not something that is, you could really say, is in the works or something that is possible yet. It's just something that people are just bringing up. So I'm very excited, but at the same token, I'm very doubtful that this, if it does get started, will get started soon, because I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, you're cautiously optimistic. Dan, what do you think about this?
I mean, I think it's too good to be true at this point. These are just speculations. I like the idea of moving the league to, a certain place for the time being. I think that's a good idea. But as you see with this whole virus, it spreads at different rates at different places. So you don't know if they're in their peak yet in Arizona per se. So you don't know what's going to happen there. So I think May is I don't think that's very possible. I think that's very optimistic. I don't expect that. I think even early June seems pretty optimistic. I'd say July is what I'm targeting as a fan, hoping by then it's, back. But the idea of bringing it to a certain place and having it a core central of that place for the whole time, I think that's a very good idea.
Yeah, like Dan said, it's kind of hard to really think what it's going to be, because the original report said end of May, which is definitely optimistic. But since it's the second week of April, we really don't know how the world's going to look in the end of May. So right now, honestly, that sounds like a home run plan. Like that's perfect if they can actually pull it off. I don't see how they can have, because they'd have to have some sort of spring training, some sort of way to ramp up the players. They can't just pick up their gloves and just start playing actual meaningful games. So I mean, if they can pull it off, that's great. And actually, this kind of sets the stage for all the other sports too to kind of follow and find these concentrated areas where it's not as greatly affected. And it seems like all the players so far have voiced their approval of this plan. So if they're on board, I think they could pull it off.
Yeah, and I think that the MLB has different ways it could go about this that would all be satisfying to sports fans around the world. And the MLB has said that they were there in World War II and World War I. They were the thing that got people's minds off of how bad things really were. So they want to be that again for the American people. And I think and I think that would be a great thing for the MLB to regain some of the popularity they've lost over the last couple of years to other sports. If they're the one sport playing, believe me, I wouldn't usually watch a Padres game or somebody like that, but I'll be tuning in if that's the only thing on.
Well, yeah, definitely. I think this is something, like I said earlier, would not only be great for baseball, just bringing people back to some sense of normality. Because right now, the life and the world that we are living in, the society that we are living in, we are going outside wearing masks and gloves, and it's weird right now, bro. I feel like a nuclear attack just struck the nation, and we can't go anywhere. Honestly, that's how I feel, and it's not something that I ever thought, especially at this point in my life, I would ever feel like that. It's honestly, it's crazy. But for something like this playing in Arizona, I do like it, but I do have some questions, right? So number one, it would be all 30 teams. So from what I'm hearing, I believe there's about 10 fields out there, not including Chase Field is where the Diamondbacks play. So what I have heard is that if you're going to be having 15 games going on in a day, right? You would probably have to have one day game, one maybe possibly a 4 o'clock game, and a night game. So
well, that's what they did say they were going to do. They said that they would play 3 games per day per field. So that would be that's a baseball basically every hour of the day.
It sounds like it would be a lot to pull off, but there's no like fans or concessions or all that kind of prep that they had to do for a normal game with 30,000 fans. It's completely different. You kind of just have to have the umpires in the field ready. And the way that these staffs are, they can get these fields ready for 3 games in a day.
Yeah,
You go.
Yeah, I don't see why, they're just targeting Arizona. I think, like, if you were to split the American League and the National League, you got to shorten the season anyway. So, like we said a couple episodes ago, you got to get rid of interleague play. So why don't you just make the AL and the NL go in 2 different cities and make it a little bit less of a headache with all these games and all this certain amount of time?
Well, they're doing it in Arizona because there's a ton of spring training fields there because that's where.
Of course, yeah. But
and Florida is a lot more dangerous to be in than Arizona. It's a lot more greatly affected. So that's why Arizona kind of the perfect state.
Yeah, but if you're closing it off to the public, which you should be at this point, there shouldn't be large gatherings. Why is Florida a problem?
But they still have to live there for months and months.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my biggest thing is, right, so it's not just the 40 players that they have on a major league roster or 40-man roster. You're talking about 40-man roster for 30 major league teams. You're talking about upper management. You're talking about trainers. You're talking about major league umpires. You're talking about just people who are on the field who have to prep everything just for, the daily operations to go. Where are all these people going to be at? I mean, how can you house so many people? Do you have to buy out all hotels in that area? Do you have to buy out transportation? How do you make it so that nobody comes in contact with these people to get them infected? I mean, how do you do something like that? How do you monitor all staff and all essential personnel? I really don't understand that.
And then it's not even. There's also, like, for the Mets, for example, you have SNY, you have the commentators, you have the people working behind the scenes, you have the people broadcasting the game. You have that whole side of it too. So, like, there's even more people on top of that. And we, like I said before, we don't know if this virus has spread to Arizona all the way. So that could even come in a bigger wave and hit all these people in the same space, in a secluded space. I don't know. It's going to be a very interesting thing to see.
Yeah, seeing how they work out the logistics will be interesting. But all I know is I'm for this major league summer camp idea in Phoenix, Arizona. I'd like to see it. I want to see the storylines play out. I think it's a good idea. And one source says that it's this or nothing. So I'll take it because I don't want to not see baseball this year.
Well, Steve, actually, one last thing, right? Something I'm not sure that we brought up. So they're talking about having the games and these like minor league stadiums or whatever kind of thing you want to call this. But they're also talking about having the big games like an ESPN game or a Sunday night ESPN game or a Fox game, playing that at Chase Field because they are well equipped to handle a nationally televised game. So honestly, I think that also, let's say a Sunday night game, you have Yankees, Red Sox. You put them in Chase Field, they've had Sunday night baseball games there, so they would be well equipped. So I think they can do it. Definitely they can do it. But one last point that I have, right? So how about injuries? Are you really going to treat all injuries the same now? Or, are these guys going to be taken care of? Because, like right now, a lot of people aren't having Tommy John surgery. They're not going to the hospital to get regular checkups. They're really only going to have their training staff. Their health staff is not completely going to be there. And I don't see them going to the hospital whenever they fall or they have a hamstring injury. That's something that they really have to look into because that is how more and more people are going to get infected.
Yeah,
I think most injuries. I think most injuries you can kind of deal with a training staff. If you need something like surgery, that's going to be more of a problem. And if, say, someone has surgery and they're usually out for a month, it's probably going to be a lot more than that if they go through this scenario. So, that's something definitely that they have to take in consideration.
Yeah, and you see people giving Noah Syndergaard some flack for deciding to get Tommy John surgery, which I thought was total BS that he had to get, and there was any flack for that.
Great. Now it's the best thing he ever did.
Yeah, that he got
just in time.
That was perfect timing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but let's move on to some other sports who are also thinking of ideas to keep their seasons going. The NBA was angling to cancel their season, according to Brian Windhorst. And then they got on the phone with President Trump and they changed their mind. So who knows what's going to happen with the NBA? But there's a report that they are looking into Las Vegas as the way to get their season through. So what do you guys think about the NBA's Las Vegas plan? Or should they just cancel it outright?
It might be. I think it's got to be necessary. You got to finish the season, and you look at a lot of these teams that are having great runs. You look at the Milwaukee Bucks are having a historical season for their franchise. Obviously, they want to go to the playoffs and play and see if they can win a championship. But you look at the side of the Lakers, the biggest global basketball team, with LeBron James, who's having a career year, and he's number one in the West. There's a chance he can go to the finals. He doesn't have to play the Warriors, so he might be looking at a championship. There's a lot of different storylines. The Clippers, Kawhi. You want to see it all unfold. You don't want the season just to be chalked up and thrown out. Like, there's a lot. Some guys are retiring. You got to play the season, figure it out. The Las Vegas idea, if that's how it has to happen, it's got to.
Honestly, this whole Las Vegas for the NBA, it seems a lot more feasible than the MLB's plan for Arizona. There's less games, there's less players, everything's indoors. It's just, if they can pull it off, I mean, I don't know what they're going to do, like, playoff wise. You kind of talked about this in previous episodes. I don't know how they're going to format that, but I think if they get enough arenas and stuff in Las Vegas, I don't see why they shouldn't be able to pull this off.
Well, that's a very interesting point, and I kind of have to agree with both of you guys, right? So, Dan, I definitely have to agree that right now the book is still open. There are so many storylines that have not been completed yet. It's like watching a movie, and the movie's just getting good, but really the plot hasn't fully played off yet. So you really want that climax. You want to know how the story ends. So that is something where I definitely do not think that the NBA season should be canceled. No way, no way. It's not something like the MLB season where, okay, maybe it never happens. But the thing is, with the NBA season and the NHL season, their seasons were right in the middle of, they're right in the middle. They're almost towards the end. They're almost like in the playoffs. That's something, like I said earlier, you want to know.
Like three quarters, yeah.
So also another thing, I personally think that another big problem that the NBA has is, unlike other sports, they've had some of their players, get the virus. So you really don't know who has it, who doesn't have it. So I think another reason why they're kind of on the fence about getting this thing started is because they don't want this thing to spread more than it has,
Yeah, but I do think that this Vegas idea is a good idea. Of course, you have to make sure everybody's tested and everybody's clean before you start the season back up. Las Vegas is well equipped to handle it. They host the Summer League every year. And you see in March Madness, you can have 4 games a day on the same court. Basketball is quicker. You start earlier in the day. You go all day. West Coast teams are used to playing that late, and the East Coast teams will adapt. So I think that this will be this. If this is the only way, then it's what you got to do. And another sport, I know Pablo mentioned, the NHL is such hand in hand with the NBA, and the NHL is looking, and this is my favorite one about these sports trying to finish their season. They're looking to North Dakota to finish their season. Should the NHL go to North Dakota and get this season finished and hand out the Stanley Cup?
They should 100% do this. North Dakota is easily the least populated of any of these states that have been floated around. As long as they have everyone tested beforehand and everyone's safe to go there, I don't see a reason why they shouldn't be able to go there. And it's still indoors. It's tough. I mean, it's tough to have it's North Dakota, so they have like hockey rinks available. So they'll make a way to get everything done. Just go right to the playoffs. Just get it done as soon as possible. They should be able to do this.
Nope, Dan is
talking.
The
biggest problem with all this stuff is.
Wait, your mic's.
Hello?
Dan's having some technical difficulties.
All right,
Pablo.
I'll go, right? Well, the thing about, as we said earlier, with NBA and NHL, they're indoors. So playing in the Dakotas wouldn't be that big of a deal, But I personally think that it can be done. If they want it to happen, it can happen. because this is something where, like I said earlier, they need to finish this story. This has to be finished. This needs to be done, and you need to turn your attention into next year and into the offseason.
Yeah, sorry about those technical difficulties right there, Pablo. That was a great point. You're not a big hockey guy, but you really killed it right there. I want to get into that because North Dakota, they have great minor league facilities, and if you can get every team in there, and I know right now the Avalanche are finding out that more and more people on their team are testing positive, and they're not revealing names, which I like because you see there's a stigma, like people with Rudy Gobert.
Yeah.
So hockey, I think they're doing it right. I think that they're really waiting for the NBA to make their moves. These are the two sports that have been affected the most by this because they were mid-season. I mean, canceling a season outright and canceling it mid-season are two completely different things. So I think if the NBA and NHL can get focused, get in one spot and finish their seasons, that would be perfect. And I think it was unfeasible just last month that people would not be able to go to watch sporting events. And now we're just begging for empty arena sports. So
I'll tell you what, Steve, I will take any sport. I would take a badminton championship tournament. I would take a ping pong 24-hour marathon. I would take a World Series of poker. I would take anything. I can't take it anymore. I need to go back to some sense of normality. And all I want is for, number one, sports to come back, but number two, baseball needs to get started. I don't care what you have to do. I don't care where you have to go. I don't care if it's in front of one fan, two fans, no fans. Everybody is going to watch it. It's going to be on everybody's mind. When you talk about ratings, this is going to be an absolute ratings draw. It's going to kill in the ratings because there's nothing else to watch. There's nothing else to do. So for the NBA, the NHL, and the MLB, all I have to say is make moves and get this done because it's not just for you, it's for all of us. And if we want to move forward in 2020 and going forward with the rest of our lives, this is something that has to happen.
Yeah, and it'll give us something to talk about too, because 2020 has been a tough year to start a sports podcast. Dan, you're back. You want to talk about the NHL in North Dakota?
Yo, can you hear me?
Yes, you're good.
Yeah, just real quick. What I was trying to say before is, yeah. All right. So what I was trying to say before is, the main problem with all this is not testing these people. Like you could get the test. These organizations are rich enough to buy the test and get it to themselves. But the problem is maintaining everyone being healthy. That means players and coaches and all these other people not going out into the public and getting the disease and then bringing it in. So maintaining it in a closed setting is the hardest thing to do. You go to North Dakota where the infection rates are very, very low and you have all these ice rinks that they could do it at. You keep it very low key, very close to the vest. I don't think that Vegas and Arizona is definitely more problematic when it comes to that. North Dakota, on the other hand, that's probably the best idea of all three of these sports.
But I think all three of these sports are pretty tied together. Like, I think whoever makes the first decision of the three major sports of what they're going to do with their season is going to have like a really big effect on the rest. Like if the NBA just tomorrow says we're canceling the season, we're not doing it, we can't pull the logistics off of doing this. Yeah. I think that's going to really affect what the NHL does for their decision. I think that's really going to affect what baseball does for their decision. So
just like how it was last time, right? Yeah. When they suspended the season, literally with not even within 24 hours, NHL, MLB, all major sports were on hold. It was crazy. I had never seen anything like it. The darkest day in sports history.
And you have to hope that the main thing I was worried about when the NBA was, when the report came out that they were thinking about canceling the season, was that if the NBA canceled, you never know what the other sports might do because that they follow the NBA's lead. The NBA is the leader right now besides the NFL. The NFL is going to go on no matter what. The NBA, they are like the leader of the second tier. So we'll see what happens with that. But also another thing is that Donald Trump had all these guys on conference call. Two of these guys said that they were the only commissioners not scared to keep their sports going on. And that was Dana White of the UFC and Vince McMahon of the WWE. We'll talk about Vince later in the show, but let's talk about Dana White because UFC 249 was just canceled hours before we came on air. and all UFC events have been canceled after Dana White secured a private island to have fights on. Dan, I know you must be heartbroken, so you can start us off with this topic.
Here we go.
I gotta say, I'm very surprised by this. The way Dana White was. Are you serious? What the
I mean, it's
fuck?
delayed. You can
Oh my God.
Go.
I don't know.
Come on, you're good.
We could hear you.
All right. Well, the people watching this on YouTube, whatever. All right. So yeah, I wasn't really surprised by this at all. I'm sorry, I was very surprised by this because Dana White was very certain in the way he was talking that all this was going to happen. The island coming out with the reports of that, and while he was talking about all this, he was very meticulous and very punctual on what he was saying. He was very like, this is going to happen. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. These athletes were going to meet, or these fighters are going to meet in a certain place. We're going to get them to the island, and when they have out of the country fights, it seemed like he had this big plan and everything was going to work out. And then just all this news that all these cars are getting canceled. It's just like, wow, like you really blue balled up. This sucks.
Yeah, I have to agree. And I was really psyched for this private island idea. It would have been like a mix of the Castaway and Mortal Kombat on an island. I don't even know what it would have been like. I would personally, if you were on the island having these fights, how awesome would it be? Just have the octagon on like a beach and everybody the cameras surrounding. Would have been perfect. Coconut trees up in the background.
That would have been cool, but honestly, that's not too realistic. So UFC can kind of go, the way of wrestling in terms of putting on a show with no crowd. But I don't think that I really don't know if it would be able to work. But then again, I do think that would work a lot more than having it on our own like private island. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and it's disappointing for some of these cards that were going to be so good and they were exciting match. I know Dominic Cruz was coming in to replace somebody, and it would have been cool seeing that come back. And of course, you had Gaethje versus Ferguson, and that would have been a fantastic fight too. So it's disappointing, but like Dan said, it was expected.
Well, with the UFC, all you need is a cage and some cameras and a referee and the two fighters. Like, it's very easy to get this going compared to other sports. Like, yeah, you need the thing with the island though that I was confused by was like, well, what if someone gets knocked unconscious, gets the shit beaten out of them? They got to go to the hospital. What hospital do you have on a private island to take care of these fighters? They're putting their lives on the line, So that was the problem I had with the island. But I mean, if Dana White had an answer for it, then whatever, man. I don't know.
Yeah, Dana White would have to be some mad scientist to have to pull that off. And you got to hand it to him because he tried his hardest to get this.
Honestly, to me, Steve, that kind of sounded like a Vince McMahon type of thing to do because Vince McMahon is always about his first ever, right? So Dana White was almost like, look, nobody's ever done this before. Let's bring UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship, to a island with nobody there. It would be something revolutionary and groundbreaking. So I do appreciate him thinking outside of the box, but the other token, it's not something that I really ever thought was ever going to take place.
Yeah, going from one mad scientist to another, Pablo said Dana White was thinking like Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon, his creation, WrestleMania 36. The show must go on, as Vince McMahon says. And WrestleMania 36, I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised. And actually, Dan, shockingly, I think had the most picks right in our prediction segment. So go figure on that. I want to get your guys' thoughts on a couple of the matches. And the first one I have to talk about is the Boneyard match, the main event of night one. Pablo, this had to have exceeded every expectation you had.
Well, number one, the first thing that I loved was that it wasn't in front of a no-person crowd. This was everything it needed to be and more times 1,000. This was incredible. This was probably one of the most memorable things that World Wrestling Entertainment has put on television in years. I have to say years. This is something that was amazing. It was awesome. Look, guys, if you haven't seen it, go out there and watch it. The Boneyard match was a perfect way to end night one of WrestleMania. Just everything from it being at a cemetery. You know, it's not a real cemetery, but a cemetery offset somewhere. It was perfect. Just everything. You had the Undertaker come back. He wasn't the old and washed dead man. He was the American badass. It was awesome. It was more like kind of real life. Kayfabe wasn't. All I have to say right now is I don't remember the last time where the Undertaker was actually calling people by their names. He was asking people questions. Oh, like, do you remember my wife's name now? We saw like a personality to the Undertaker that was more than just the dead man. And honestly, I thought this was a tremendous match. And this was something that I really didn't think was going to be anything special, especially with the Undertaker. The man is almost 60 years old. He's 59. And you have AJ Styles, who I know if they give him the time and they give him the effort, he could be the best guy on the roster. So they gave these guys the time. They put a lot of effort into the story, and this was awesome.
Yeah, the thing that you go ahead.
You got it, Andrew. I'll go after you.
I was gonna say the thing that kind of like impressed me the most about what they're doing with no fans for WrestleMania, even the shows before that, is you actually, like, for the first time in a while, you hear a lot of the wrestlers like talking to each other and talking smack. And you mentioned this a little bit, but it's just like that's a side of like the fighters that you really don't see when there's a ton of thousands of screaming fans. So just that kind of perspective and seeing their personalities and stuff was cool.
The Boneyard match is up there with the best main events in WrestleMania history. I don't care if it only main evented night one, and if you want to cheapen that, it is in the top 5. It was that good. It was amazing. It's a WrestleMania main event that had its own score. It was a $1 million set they built in 5 days and destroyed, and then took over a week to clean. That's WrestleMania to me. AJ Styles, he's proved since he's gotten to WWE, I believe he is the most important wrestler on the roster. That guy has continued to make chicken salad out of chicken. He took this match that nobody was excited for. He was amazing in the Boneyard match. I have to give him all the props in the world. This guy came over from TNA. People said he would never be anything in WWE, and he has one of Vince McMahon's most trusted assets since coming over. So kudos to AJ Styles and Undertaker. The whole match, I was texting people. I'm like, I can't believe it. This is amazing. I can't remember the last time a wrestling match made me feel like that.
Go, Dan. All right.
Yeah, I just want to say real quick, I like the angle by the biker taker.
All right, Pablo, back to you.
All right.
Hello?
So,
Hello?
once again, I apologize.
Yeah. No, it's actually better without the headphones.
17. But I think that this match would have been absolutely terrible. If
Dan, you're echoing now.
this guy.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
All right, Pablo, more on the Boneyard match.
So I think this match would have been terrible if it were in front of a live crowd. Not that the AJ Styles couldn't have carried the match. It's that the Undertaker, he just looked great. You know, they had time to edit. You know, he didn't look sloppy, a sloppy old man. The lighting was very dark. He just looked like he was so well fit and put together in that environment that it was just awesome. Everything about it was awesome. And that's not something that if they would just had a regular old Buried Alive match, it would have come off as cheesy. It would have come off as, regular and vanilla, something that we've seen before. This was something so outside of the box.
And I think that if The Undertaker should never have a match inside the ring again, honestly. He proved that this is where we need to see The Undertaker, and this is how it should go. And another thing is this may open the door, finally, for Undertaker versus Sting. So that's what I'm most excited for.
Sting.
Dan, Dan,
Yes.
welcome back, and you
Yes.
sound better now. So I think you're gonna go with the phone for the
Yeah, we
rest
went
of
with
the
the phone. The laptop was not doing it. But
Being-
anyway, what I was trying to say was the whole biker taker thing. That was pretty cool. You know, getting him a little more personality was always great. But the thing that WWE got right, and they took advantage of the no fans, was they pretty much created a cinematic piece of the Boneyard match. You know, they really put a lot of their resources into this, and it was almost like a movie you were watching. How they did everything, and I thought that was really cool, and they did it pretty well.
Yeah, speaking of cinematic matches, there was another one this weekend that absolutely blew my mind, and I actually think I liked it better than the Boneyard match. They were two very different, but man, I loved it. I'm wearing his jacket right now. It was The Fiend Bray Wyatt versus John Cena. I don't even know if you can call it a match, but it is the first thing in wrestling that have made me think. I had to go back and watch it like 3 more times just to realize what I just watched. The Firefly Funhouse match between Cena and The Fiend was just, I don't even have words for it. It was that good. I know, Pablo, you didn't like it as much as me, so tell me why.
Well, number one, Steve, I didn't like it at all. It's not that, you know, they didn't put any time and effort into it. It just wasn't a match. Nothing happened. It was just nothing but a whole bunch of like movie cutscenes. I felt like it was like a dream on a it's like when you're watching TV and like a character, he falls asleep and they show his dream. That's almost what it looked like. It wasn't a match. That's what I hated about it. It's not. To me, all the time that they built up and they built up a match. This is something that they should have just thrown together and put it on like a Raw or like put it on a SmackDown to build towards a match. This did nothing for me. This is another reason why I do not like this Fiend character. I do not like this Fiend gimmick. I think Bray Wyatt is one of the most talented performers in the entire industry, but I don't like just his persona. I don't like the Fiend thing. I don't like that he has this Mr. Rogers type character. He doesn't really cut promos in front of the crowd. It's all scripted. It's all childish. To me, if you're above a certain age, something like this is corny. Something like this is lame. And I don't like John Cena. But even if this were a match, I think that these two would have been able to put something good together. But just being as this was kind of like a cheesy movie, I didn't like it at all.
You see, I didn't see it as a cheesy movie at all. I saw it as WWE venturing into a different area than they've ever ventured in before. And they took stuff that the fans never thought they would touch upon with a guy like John Cena, who's been their golden goose God knows how long. I know he's not around as much anymore, but it never seemed like Cena would go away. And I think what they did with Bray Wyatt was actually perfect for his character. You see, I'm a huge fan of Bray Wyatt. I'm a giant fan of his character. I think he's the best thing in wrestling as of now. And I think that Bray Wyatt's character only got stronger. And I think that this has opened the door. I don't know if we'll ever see it, but it's opened the door for an eventual John Cena heel turn. Because you've seen people Bray Wyatt have feuded with have all gone on to turn heel after. So it would be nice to see if John Cena ever came back. It's been hinted at that this could have been his last WWE appearance as he was disappeared at the. But I'm just hoping if he ever comes back, it's as a bad guy. Moving on to.
Yes.
You got something else to say about it?
No. Well, I don't think it's his last appearance, but I don't see John Cena turning heel, and it's not because of how the match ended or anything. It's just something where John Cena is just the guy that for years and years and years we've wanted him to turn heel, and he just never does it. He is just somebody to me who, if he didn't go away and make his movies, he would still be on TV and would still be burying the roster and would still be, be the cause of wrestling being so stale. And that's just my take on this.
I know you're an ABC guy, anybody but Cena. But there were other good matches on the WrestleMania card as well. I really enjoyed Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens and the triple threat ladder match. Was there any other things you enjoyed about WrestleMania, and what's next?
To me, the match that I enjoyed the most, this was the best match of the weekend in my opinion. Not the best segment. the Rhea Ripley Charlotte match was incredible. I loved everything, the psychology. Rhea Ripley, she just looked amazing. She was selling her leg the whole match. She was selling it like a 25-year-old veteran. She was just incredible, and the sky's the limit for Rhea Ripley. But the biggest problem I had, number one, with both title matches for the women, number one, Shayna Baszler. She has been built up and built up and built up as this beast. She was a beast in NXT. She gets called up to the main roster. Number one, she definitely should have won the Royal Rumble. She didn't win the Royal Rumble, but then she wins the Elimination Chamber. She was the first person in history to eliminate everyone in the Elimination Chamber. They built her up so much, only to have her lose to Becky Lynch at WrestleMania. Becky Lynch has been kind of burying the whole roster. And then you have Shayna Baszler bury the whole roster. And then you have Becky Lynch defeat Shayna Baszler. So honestly, what is left for Becky Lynch? It doesn't make any sense. This was Shayna Baszler's time to go over. Now, one more thing. Charlotte had no business winning the NXT Women's Championship. The only reason why she won, number one, is because the AEW effect. If you don't think Vince McMahon, and I know you're going to talk about this, the ratings, if you don't think Vince McMahon is looking at the fact that every single Wednesday, All Elite Wrestling is topping NXT in the ratings, you were out of your mind. That is something that I knew was going to happen, especially when they moved NXT not only to USA Network, but they moved it to 2 hours in the same exact time slot as All Elite Wrestling AEW Dynamite. He is trying to advance in the ratings, especially with a time like now where wrestling is not really the way things should be. I think this is something where he wants his top women's wrestler, his top women's performer on his C show because he wants to compete with the other brand.
Yeah, I did enjoy my favorite match of the weekend. That was an actual match. Was Kevin Owens versus Seth Rollins. I think Rollins was phenomenal in the match. I think the amount of trash talking these guys had was amazing. And if this match happened in an arena, I think that it would have been even bigger because that spot with Kevin Owens jumping off the WrestleMania sign was bananas. And I wanted, like you said, I wanted to talk about how NXT for the first time ever since the Wednesday Night Wars started beat AEW in the rating. It took a whole NXT TakeOver episode and an hour-long Johnny Gargano Adam Cole match. But is this a sign of things to come, or is this a fluke?
Well, NXT, they have a lot of talent on the roster, but I just think it's something where AEW Dynamite, people are very intrigued because they really don't know what's going on, especially with all this new talent that they are bringing in and that they are building up. I think that it has the potential to be very close, but I still think that most weeks Dynamite is going to be on top.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think that NXT, while it has been a quality show, the star power on AEW is greater, and AEW provides a different product, and wrestling fans just need to change sometimes. Let's move on from wrestling to the NFL, talk about some NFL rumors, and then we'll get into our question. So this one's not a rumor. This just came true right before we came on air. Is Brandin Cooks is going to another team. This guy just can't seem to find somewhere. And he's going to the Texans. He's the replacement for DeAndre Hopkins. So it's a good trade for both teams.
Well, we saw, I think it's a good fit for him, personally. Deshaun Watson's going to want that downfield threat to match up with Will Fuller. I think they could really complement each other. But from the organizational standpoint, you get a second-round pick for DeAndre Hopkins, and then you trade away the second-round pick for Brandin Cooks. There is a big talent gap, no secret to anybody, between the two players. We could probably say DeAndre Hopkins, if not top 3, maybe top 1, in my opinion. So what they were doing in that instance, I mean, we've talked about how dumb the trade was. Getting Brandin Cooks is a good player. And the Rams, I'm going to be interested to see what they do with, I guess they might have some hope with, was it Josh Reynolds as the third piece or whatever. But for Brandin Cooks himself, I think it's a good fit for him.
I think this is a phenomenal trade for the Rams. And before I go into it, I want to say that I do like Brandin Cooks as a player. I think he's a very solid player. Before last season, he had like 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons, and he was never talked about as one of the top receivers in the league. Just because he's kind of like everyone sees him as this one-dimensional deep play guy. But for the Rams, you look at a guy and they wanted to trade him because he's making around $15 million as a cap hit. And they got a 2nd-round pick for him. I know they also gave up a 4th, but you're still getting another pick in the 2nd round. And for a team that's always been trading away draft picks the past 3 years, every single trade deadline, every offseason, they're shipping away picks like they're candy. They needed that pick, and they got it, and they still have a lot of wide receiver depth. And so I like that trade a lot for the Rams. And the Texans, they needed somebody. They couldn't go into the season with Will Fuller as their number 1 receiver. But now they're paying Brandin Cooks $15 million, paying David Johnson a lot of money. You're going to have to pay Deshaun Watson. I just don't get – again, we say this every week on the podcast. I don't know what the Texans are doing.
My thing with the Texans is while I do not agree with these trades, I don't think that they gotten better. This offense is still going to be pretty scary. I think David Johnson and Brandin Cooks, Will Fuller, Deshaun Watson, they'll still be able to put up points. Are they better off without DeAndre Hopkins? I don't think so, but I think they still have a good enough offense where they're going to win games. This trade, I think, is a win-win, but I do not like the money that Brandin Cooks is going to be getting and that the Texans are going to be paying him. But the Rams, they needed another 2nd-round pick because they traded their 1st-round pick for Jalen Ramsey. And I think that the Rams, you've seen, like Andrew was saying, they've been strapped for picks for the last 2-3 years. So these guys, they need to start building through the draft because that money's going to run out. This trade worked out perfectly because now they have more money to spend on Jalen Ramsey's extension, and maybe it'll distract some people from that horrible logo they came up with.
Yeah. Well, Steve, I have to agree with you. This is something where I don't really think it's that big of a deal. But when you look at the money being exchanged here, I do think that's something that you have to take into account. But personally, I still think that both teams, they have their weaknesses and they have their strengths. So to me, it's a move where who cares? That's my take on it. It's a who cares type of move.
I got a question real quick. So we saw the Rams, they go to the Super Bowl and they don't make the playoffs last year. Their offense hit a wall. Now you're getting rid of your big deep threat receiver. So how do you get this offense back to where it was? Like if you're losing a pretty big piece from your offense.
I'll take that first. Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
This is a deep wide receiver class, and I think you can find a pretty serviceable replacement. That's why I'm a little surprised the Texans made this move for Brandin Cooks, but I'm not sure. But I think that the Rams, like Andrew said, draft well and they'll be fine.
And
who do you think they're going to target?
I mean, I don't know exactly what pick the Texans have in the 2nd round that they're sending them, but there should be a solid guy like a Jalen Reagor or Brandon Ayuk.
Brandon Ayuk.
One of those guys in the 2nd round they can target. They don't have to go receiver because they do have depth. They have Robert Woods, they have Cooper Kupp, and that McVay offense. If Goff plays better than he did last year and he kind of takes a little bit of a step up, I think they'll be fine without Cooks.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that Goff, this is on his shoulders. If he plays well, the Rams will win games. If he doesn't, they'll be out of the playoffs again. People forget that if we had the playoff system that we're going to have next year, the Rams would have made the playoffs. So they're not that far away. Another news in the NFL, with the draft coming up in 2 weeks, the Lions are looking to trade out of that number 3. Personally, this burns me up because this would really screw the Giants over. What are your guys' thoughts on this?
Well, you're looking at, you trade away Darius Slay, so you're looking at Jeff Okudah coming right in and getting that 3rd pick. But there is value if a team like the Chargers or a team like, I don't know, the Colts or someone that really loves Tua or really loves Justin Herbert or even Jordan Love wants to trade up to that 3rd pick to get their guy, then historically you got to go trade up and get that guy. So the Lions looking at it from that perspective, you could get a lot of value. You might be getting multiple 1st-round picks, and the Lions are a team that, this is probably Matt Patricia's last year. He's won maybe 9 or 10 games in his 3 years he's been there. So this is a rebuilding team, and Matthew Stafford, I don't know how much longer he's got there. You got to start getting picks, just as much as being a Lions fan must hurt and just seeing this team not go anywhere. I hate to say it, but rebuilding, just keep getting picks and hopefully something works out in the near future.
The Lions are in the exact same spot, including the exact same pick that my New York Jets were in last year. And I 100% thought they should have traded out of that pick. They took Quinn Williams. Jury's still out on that. But I really I still wish they traded back, accumulated picks. They're both not Jets last year, Lions coming up this year, not in a position to win, really. They just need to accumulate picks, rebuild, get younger and younger.
Yes, definitely. When you're a team like that who is not very competitive, you have to do to the best of your ability to try to stack up on these draft picks, because at the end of the day, the future is in your hands. The future is all these young players that have not made the National Football League yet. So I think, number one, when you are building a team, you have to look at the youth, because the youth is going to unlock the key to the future.
Yeah, real quick before you finish out, Steve, I just want to point out that the Vikings and the Packers are two teams, I think, in the NFL that have the most picks in this upcoming draft. So if you're in the NFC North and you're the Lions, you obviously want to accumulate as many picks as you could get to compete with those two teams that are only going to get younger.
Yeah, I think you guys really hit the nail on the head with this one. I'll take it from a different perspective, and I'll go from Big Blue's perspective, sitting there at the 4. If the Lions trade out of 3, that really hurts the Giants. I know they'll have Okudah and most likely Simmons there at 3, but the Giants, it takes away the option of trading back, because it's very difficult to get the same value as the Lions would get for that 3 pick. I really can't see another team trading up for a guy like Herbert or Love. I could be wrong. It could completely help us out. A team is desperate for Herbert and wants to jump the Dolphins or the Chargers. But I really think that this would hurt us if this deal does go down. And if the Lions, if it is the Dolphins or it's the Chargers making that call, you should accept that in an instant. I don't care what they're giving you, because you're still going to get one of these playmakers on defense, because I don't think the Dolphins are going to take Okudah. So I think that the Lions would be in the perfect position if they trade back with one of those two teams to still get the guy they wanted.
Steve,
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Steve, give me a minute. Let me just kind of feed into your fantasy. I know I'm probably going to see this in a group chat between now and the drafts. So, okay, Joe Burrow goes number 1. Theoretically, the Redskins fall in love with Tua. They take Tua number 2. Chargers don't want the Dolphins to take Herbert. They panic, trade up to 3, take Justin Herbert. Who's sitting there at number 4? Chase Young. Just throwing that idea out there.
Hey, if that happens, I'll be doing jumping jacks in my living. Yeah, I'll be going crazy.
But what I was just going to say real quick with this draft, I see the Dolphins at 5. I don't think there's any way they're going to be drafting at number 5 this year. I think they're going to be either trading up with the Redskins, the Lions, or even the Giants to move up a pick to get their quarterback, because it's obviously a glaring need for that franchise.
The Dolphins would be the perfect trade partner for the Giants. That is exactly what I want them to do. Trade back 1 spot, get maybe a late first or a second-round pick to move 1 spot back and still get your guy. You can't do it better than that, and that is what I want. It'd be perfect. So our next topic is that Cam Newton is willing to wait in free agency. He's in no rush to sign with a team. Where should he be looking to go? What's the best fit?
Well, I'll start it off here, right? I'm not sure if it's the best fit, but I do think that the Patriots are a good fit for Cam Newton. They just lost Tom Brady, and Cam Newton, he's not a slouch, bro. I know he hasn't been what he was that one year he took the Panthers to the Super Bowl, but I still do think that he could be a very good quarterback, especially around a very talented team. I think he would perform very well and to the best of his ability.
Yeah, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, we were talking a little about Cam, and I was like, the Patriots is a good option because they're in win-now mode and looking at it as a short-term contract. But the Patriots don't really have much cap space, so I don't know what they're going to be doing at quarterback, fulfilling like a major signing. With Cam Newton, on the other hand, he's waiting because he wants a long-term deal. He wants a 3, 4, 5-year deal, and he wants to be the immediate starter in the face of a franchise. But really, what franchise is willing to take that risk on Cam Newton to do that right now? And that's why I've been saying all along that 1-year deal he should be taking to try to prove it, because he has the talent. He should have faith in himself that he could really get it done in 1 year and prove why he's a long-term quarterback. But right now, I don't see any team in the NFL really going with a 3, 4, even 5-year deal for Cam Newton.
Yeah, you mentioned it. I mean, we talked about him going to the Patriots as probably the perfect fit for him. But if the Patriots don't see him as a fit and they don't go after him, I don't see another team that they're going to hand him the keys to the car and make him the starter next year. If he is signing with a team, it's going to have to be a 1-year deal. You don't sign multi-year deals really when you're coming off injury in April in an NFL season. It just doesn't happen. So, I mean, if he wants to take a 1-year deal and get into a competition somewhere outside of New England, that could happen. But he's not going to. No one's going to hand them the keys to the car and start there and have just be the sole guy, commit to them right away this late into the offseason.
Yeah, my thing with Cam, I said it a couple of weeks ago, is I still think that he should take a 1-year deal, go down to Miami, play for them, maybe win the AFC East and become in a shocking MVP type season, and then somebody will give him a long term. If Cam Newton can do that for the Miami Dolphins, they might even say, screw it. We drafted somebody, but we're keeping you. So you never know, because he's still young. So he's just a little injury prone. But if he can prove he can stay healthy, he'll get that deal.
I think that jacket's on a little bit too tight. I think you're in the Firefly Funhouse. I don't know.
I'm telling you, Miami, Cam Newton, it's not too far from Carolina. He can make the trip. Yes. The Falcons and Buccaneers unveiled new uniform. I think that they were really different, and I'm surprised that they haven't gotten more feedback. What do you guys think about these uniforms?
The Buccaneers, that really stood out to me. I thought they were the better of the two. I mean, same division, you got to compare them to each other. The problem I have with the Atlanta Falcons uniforms, and I think you said it in our group chat, Steve, I don't like when they do the ATL or the city logo or the city, the lettering right on the front. I'd rather have the team name a little smaller like the Buccaneers did. The Buccaneers went a little old school, bringing back Tom Brady, bringing back the good times. They're having their feels, So I like them better. And then I also love what the Carolina Panthers did with the Atlanta Falcons, creating that funny video on Twitter and going at the Falcons.
Yeah, I really like what the Buccaneers did with their uniforms. It seems like every time a team goes with new uniforms, it's very futuristic, very progressive uniforms. It's nice the team that kind of cleans it up, goes back to their old kind of style. I like the way they set everything up. It kind of fits that they got Tom Brady at the same time they went back to more classic uniforms, but they cleaned them up so they look clean, they look nice. Not a fan at all what the Falcons did. I mean, it's hard to mess up red, white, and black. I mean, that's a pretty cool color combination. So they'll make it work, but I really don't like the way that the red blends into the black, and I just feel like that's not like an NFL style uniform.
Well, I personally, my favorite thing about sports is all the different types of uniforms. So to me, whenever a team wants to experiment and come out with new logos or new designs, new color waves, I love it. I think it's great. I always think it's good to kind of show your personality on a uniform, on a jersey, to kind of, show that you're different from another team. So I personally think that it's really good compared to how terrible the Buccaneers old uniform was.
Yeah, I think it's a big upgrade over what the Buccaneers had. I think it's kind of funny how they kind of said, you know what, forget that the last 6 years even happened. We're going to upgrade the old uniforms, and I think that they finally got it right. It's just 6 years too late. My eyes didn't need to see those alarm clock numbers. I know Andrew got in a fight with Buccaneers Twitter because of this podcast. And with the Falcons, like Dan said, I really don't like how they put the city on the front above the number. I know the Jets do that. The Browns did that, but they're getting new uni. I'm not a fan of that. But I do like how the Falcons took a little bit of a different approach with these unis. I like the way the numbers look. I think that the matte black helmets will look cool. It could look cool when we see them on the field, but we'll see what happens with those.
Yeah, speaking of uniforms, I saw something on Twitter earlier before, and I don't know what MLB account did it, but they did a fan vote with the best uniform in the MLB. And surprisingly, you wonder who won? The Atlanta Braves. I was very surprised that the Braves pulled that one out. I'm not really a big fan of their uniforms.
Well, honestly, I really do like the Braves uniform, but it's definitely not the best. We all know that the best uniform is the New York Yankees. It's the most iconic in any of the sports. I personally think in the National League, the best logo, the best uniform just best logo is the Cardinals. I love the two birds on the bat. I think it's one of the most perfect logos in all of sports.
If you're talking about
I would
MLB
agree.
uniforms, my favorite in the MLB are the off-white San Francisco Giants
I was just
uniforms.
about to say that. Yep.
Love those uniforms. Love that ballpark. Very classy, very nice. Even though they've beaten my Mets a couple of times in the playoffs, that's my favorite kind of uniform.
Yeah, they're one of the most iconic. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's move on to our questions, and we'll start with some NFL ones because Griffin Teeple gave us one on Twitter. And I wanted to talk about this, but I'll tie it in with the question segment. He says he wants to know Andrew's thoughts on the Rex Ryan, Geno Smith beat. So let's hear those, Andrew.
Honestly, was a big Geno guy. Wasn't the hugest Rex guy. I don't get why he's kind of going after Rex. I know Rex is like an easy target to go after because he just keeps running his mouth. But I mean, Rex Ryan is the reason that Geno Smith started his rookie season and went 8-8 because, and you mentioned IK and Polly, I forgot how to pronounce his name, but I'm getting myself confused. Rex Ryan is the reason that Geno Smith started his rookie year because he sent Sanchez in the fourth quarter of a preseason game and he tore labrum in his shoulder, which made Geno the starter after that. And then, so he kind of has to thank Rex for that. That was Geno's best season of his career. I mean, he didn't have a statistically great season, but he went 8-8 with a terrible Jets team. But for IK, that kind of also ruined his career, but that also wasn't with Rex Ryan. So I don't know how IK kind of is in this conversation, but you have a span of 2 years where one person makes his career, one person ruins his career.
Is there a more maligned athlete in the history of Giants and Jets? It's shocking. Geno just can't catch him. Rex Ryan is still taking shots at him on SportsCenter this morning. What it all stemmed from is that Rex Ryan was talking about Bill Belichick and Tom Brady and which one is more responsible. And he said, give Bill Belichick Geno Smith, and he's not winning no Super Bowl. So
It's true, though.
I think that Geno, he kind of had a right to go back at Rex, but this beef will never die. And it's funny because if you ask Geno who his favorite coach is in his NFL career, he says Ben McAdoo. So that's just a Mount Rushmore of people.
He started Geno Smith over Eli Manning. I think if anybody was in that situation, they'd love the man too.
Yeah, Geno won't be getting his drinks paid for in New York anytime soon. Our next question comes from, we actually got this from two people. It's from PK Patel and Tarek Al-Casey, and they want to know who was the better wide receiver this decade, Larry Fitzgerald or Demaryius Thomas? Put some thought into this one.
I'm going to start this off here. Personally,
yeah, Pablo, you tell me.
Personally, in my opinion, I think that Demaryius Thomas probably was the better one of the two wide receivers. But when you just talk about being consistent and having longevity, you have to look at Larry Fitz. This guy, I mean, a lot of people confuse Andrew McCutchen, and even in the city of Pittsburgh, for being Larry Fitzgerald. So Larry Fitzgerald, honestly, is a cultural icon, especially in Arizona. He is probably one of the most iconic football players of our generation.
I am completely on the other side of this. I think it's not even entirely close. I think it's Larry Fitzgerald, known in Arizona as Larry Legend, by a landslide. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but in Demaryius Thomas's prime, he wasn't even an elite receiver. Larry Fitzgerald was.
So you're agreeing with
No. You said Demaryius Thomas was the better player. You just said longevity, Larry Fitzgerald. Well, I think longevity and better players, Larry Fitzgerald. He had the better prime. He's been to a Super Bowl. He is a lot more talented of a player. Demaryius Thomas in his prime still had stones for hands. Larry Fitzgerald is one of the most clutch players of all time. I don't need this conversation.
Yeah, this is not a conversation at all. But in Demaryius Thomas's defense, however, he had some good years with when Peyton Manning was the quarterback, and Peyton Manning really got the best out of Demaryius Thomas. But if Peyton Manning had a guy like Larry Fitz, maybe there was multiple Super Bowls for Peyton Manning in Denver.
Yeah, the argument is that Demaryius Thomas had 3 amazing years of Peyton Manning and the best offense, arguably, of all time, while Larry Fitzgerald was playing with Matt Lyon and over 40-year-old Kurt Warner. And it was just really, as Robbie Nunes messaged us off of this question, saying it was a ridiculous question. This is a ridiculous question.
Yeah.
And I know that there are people out there who actually do believe that Demaryius Thomas was a better receiver this decade than Larry Fitzgerald. I think those people need to be drug tested. That is blasphemous. And I think, Pablo, you need to be drug tested, because who the hell in Pittsburgh is confusing Andrew McCutcheon for Larry Fitzgerald?
I'm not
come up
saying
with that.
That's something that came directly out of Andrew McCutcheon's mouth. So that's
All
not
right.
something to come up with.
I think Andrew McCutcheon
Larry
is
Fitzgerald
jealous.
hasn't been
He's
in
one of the most
Pittsburgh
recognizable
in over a
faces.
decade.
And I think he's about a couple feet taller than Andrew McCutcheon too.
It was when McCutcheon had the long hair. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. All right.
I think
you get a pass.
McCutcheon's reaching a little bit. We'll have to talk to Andrew McCutcheon about that. Our next question comes from Sean Flynn, but I think we might have to save this for another show. I don't know how we're going to answer this in an amount of time that would fit into this segment.
I know the exact question, and honestly, my team would be filled with more Yankees than Mets.
Can you read the question first?
The question was, can we get an all-time Mets and Yankees team? 3 relief pitchers, 5 starters, a DH, and position player.
It is a very detailed question.
I can do that right now.
We're not
please
getting
don't.
into this. This is going to be a whole segment on the show, so
Pablo,
we'll save
just to
this
tell
for
you,
a slower week.
There would be at least 3 Mets starters in that rotation.
Yeah. Wait, all time? All time. See, all time is very big. I think you have to go all time, but our lifetime all time, because all time. I mean, you can't compare the Yankees' history to any other team's history. There's no comparing. But if I had to do in my lifetime, the one Mets player that I would have would be Carlos Beltran. He's definitely starting my outfield.
Of all the people, Carlos Beltran. We'll save that question for another week when it's a little slow. Our next question comes from Sean Rauschenberger, and he wants to know, what wide receivers do we think will fall to the second round in the NFL?
Well, yeah, Andrew was just talking about Brandin Ayuk. I really like him. I think he's going to fall, though. Also, I don't know if the Vikings are going to take this guy, Denzel Mims, but Denzel Mims out of Baylor, he has a chance to get into that first round. He's projected a second-round guy, but he has the way the first round may shape up, Denzel Mims might land in the first round. If the Eagles take Justin Jefferson and the Vikings need a wide receiver right at 22, they might be looking at a guy like Denzel Mims. If not, him and Ayuk, I could see them falling into the second round, but both very good talents.
Yeah, I think there's 4. I think, in my opinion, there's 4 locks to go in the first round. Anyone after that can easily go in the second round. I think the 4 locks are CD, Judy, Ruggs, and I think Jefferson to the Eagles is a pretty safe bet. And if he doesn't go to the Eagles, I don't see him getting past 32, because I'm a big Jefferson guy. So I think he's definitely a first round guy. So anyone after that, I could see slipping in the second round. And anyone after that, they're pretty close. That second round talent receiver core is pretty close. You can kind of make an argument for any of them.
Yeah, like Dan said, I like the mention of Denzel Mims in there because I'm a big fan of his. I don't think he ever really had a great quarterback at Baylor, but I think he could be one of those sleeper wide receivers who, whatever he goes to a good situation, this guy's going to put up big numbers. Our next question comes from Dave Stolte, and he wants to know, which 4 wide receivers would we put on our all-decade team? And his are Julio, Antonio Brown, AJ Green, and Megatron. No Demaryius Thomas.
I'd hope not.
Julio, Antonio Brown.
What were the 4 that were listed? I forget.
Not that he
put. The ones that were actually on the 4.
I don't remember personally.
It had to be Antonio Brown, Megatron. I don't know, but whatever the 4 were listed, I looked at that 4 and I said, "There's no arguments that one of those 4 shouldn't be on it." So whatever they had, the NFL, I thought they did a good job with those 4. I just forget from the top of my head who it was.
Well, I don't think Antonio Brown should be on that list, but that's just my opinion.
Antonio Brown was in his prime.
We never said that he won the Odell Beckhamitis challenge.
Yes, Antonio Brown, congratulations.
He's our dishonorable mention.
Yep.
Who did he defeat in the final round, Pablo? LeVar Ball. So Antonio Brown and LeVar Ball.
LeVar Ball.
Yeah, the NFL's top 4 was AB, Larry Fitz, Calvin, and Julio.
Yep,
So,
those are my 4 as well.
Yeah. I mean, he said AJ Green. I think I would put Larry Fitz over AJ Green just because he's been more consistent. I mean, talent-wise, AJ Green's probably a lot more talented of a wide receiver, but just longevity, clutch factor, played in bigger moments.
Was on the field.
Was on the field, yeah.
Yeah.
So Larry Fitz.
yeah, I think that's a pretty straightforward answer. The NFL, I think they did get it right. You can make arguments for guys like, who'd you say?
I mean, Odell Beckham
AJ
Jr. might be
AJ Green,
AJ
yeah.
Green,
I don't know why I'm drawing a
Odell
blank.
Beckham Jr. I think those two are,
Odell, you see, I liked Odell, but that guy, he really only has played like 3 full seasons in the last 10 years, if you count the whole decade. But Odell, he's put up monstrous numbers. I think that if he stayed healthy, he would have an argument. But Larry Fitzgerald's 10 full seasons over Odell's 3 healthy seasons. So
yeah.
Our next question comes from PK Patel, and he wants to know who should the Steelers target in round 2.
Yeah, I think I said this last week. I mean, I really love Jonathan Taylor, the running back from Wisconsin, to the Steelers in the second round. Just a perfect fit, what they need. I think he might be one of the most slept-on players in this draft. He might not have the most blazing 40 or the best combine stats, but when you look at the on-the-field numbers he produced at Wisconsin in the Big Ten, was just unbelievable what this guy did at Wisconsin against some of the best competition in college football. This is a no-brainer. If he's there, this would be such a great pick for the Steelers.
Yeah, I feel like it's written in the stars that Jonathan Taylor would be a Steeler. He's like that perfect fit. Like, he's not the flashiest player. I mean, he's had some of the craziest numbers in college football history in Wisconsin. I feel like he's a perfect fit there. I don't know if he'll make it there. It's kind of hard every year to predict where running backs are going to go because every team values running backs differently. But I think he's definitely the perfect fit.
That's exactly who the Steelers should target, a running back, because that running game was atrocious last year. Get a running back to help out big. Hopefully he'll stay healthy, or whoever will be the quarterback next year. Chris Nunez wanted to know our thoughts about Dana White buying a private island, and obviously over the next couple hours that work out for anybody. Bobby Krepik wants to know who should win the AEW championship match next week between Jon Moxley and Jake Hager. So, Pablo, you want to take that?
That's a common sense answer. It's just a common sense answer. There's only one answer.
Jon Moxley
has to win. I mean, the guy just won the title. I think that you do have to protect Hager, and he has to look very strong. But I think that he has to lose. But that is very big. You cannot have Moxley go in there and just scrape him up, in a 5-minute match. I know, and I have confidence that this will be a 15-minute plus match, and that whoever wins, which we all know it's going to be Moxley, will look strong, and so will his opponent.
Yeah, I gotta agree. Jon Moxley, he has to win this match. He has to have his first clean title defense, and I think it'll happen that way. There's no way they're taking the belt off Jon Moxley just.
Yep, Jon Moxley is going to win just because we saw him in real life, and you got a picture with him. Yep.
Yes, and nobody believed me. Nobody believed me. That story. Oh, man.
I should have been there. I broke my damn rib.
Yeah, how'd you do that?
That's it's a question. It's a story for another day, dude.
Pablo, actually, our final question is a request. They want you to do the Tootsie slide, whatever it's called, the new Drake.
Who asked that one?
PK Patel.
PK Patel has 7
sixth question of the day.
All right. Can somebody play the song? Can somebody play the
Could
music?
you could actually do it?
I can do it.
All right, let's do it.
I got this right now.
Yeah, prop
let's
your camera up a little better so you can see those feet.
I got this.
This is a treat for the people on YouTube right now.
Yeah, if you stuck with us to the end, yeah.
If you're listening to just audio, just pause it, go to YouTube right now.
We're gonna get copyrighted for this.
Wait, has he got jorts on?
He has jorts on.
Are you wearing jorts in the house right now?
I think he's got jorts on. He's in his room and he's wearing jorts.
That's all we get.
Are you wearing
Oh,
jorts?
my
No, this
God.
is very serious. So you're wearing jorts right now.
I am wearing jorts right now.
in the house.
Why?
Wow.
Okay, so
Okay.
if you're listening to audio and not watching the video, I know you might not want to see his Drake slide, but you want to see him wearing jorts in the house. So then definitely go
Yeah.
watch that.
You just exposed yourself. Nobody ever would have known.
I'm wearing jorts and I'm wearing my pants have been unbuckled for about an hour and a half. I don't know.
On that note, well, that's all we got for episode 17 of the Before the Score podcast. I'm sorry you had to see whatever the hell Pablo just did on camera. Stay safe. We'll be back next week with episode 18. We'll have a mock draft special in 2 weeks. That's all we got for this show, though.
17.